I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championships.
The rivalries, it's up there on top of the list, man. And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you.
And welcome in. It's Juck. Appreciate you so much. Where have I been? I'll tell you in a few. Let's get straight to the business, and then we'll talk about the show. I wanted to touch base and talk some Ohio State recruiting because it's been a little while, and I've got something to show you that shocked me when I was doing a little research on something, and we'll get to that in a minute. But what's going on with the class right now? There's not much happening, obviously. We all know there's still one big whale out there for the Buckeyes, and that's Bralan Womack, superstar safety out of Mississippi, a ball hawk. I mean, on offense, he's fantastic. Kid's just great. He's still out there, and he makes his decision August 22nd. Should the Buckeyes get Womack, it would be a big boost to a class that is currently, for Ohio State standards, struggling, right? It's struggling for Ohio State standards, which granted, tops of the tops, best of the best standards there are, but it is not looking like a normal Ohio State class that we're accustomed to. Now, the buzz on Bralan Womack remains that Ohio State will win this battle if they make a very competitive offer. They're still in pole position. It's where he wants to be. It's his number one choice. But currently, their offer doesn't appear to be their best and final offer. Then you've got Auburn waiting in the wings where his sister goes. And Auburn is kind of the thought is they are not going to lose over money. They're going to trump whatever there is. And I think that they're going to have to trump it considerably because they're not in a good spot right now. Hugh Freeze has a terrible class going on. And the terrible class is happening because he's not getting support from the boosters, which kind of tells us, yeah, if he doesn't pull it around, get it together this year on the field, he's out of there, and they're not going to invest a bunch of money and watch a bunch of guys transfer out the door after this. So they've made an exception apparently for Bralan Womack, which, tells us a little more about Womack. Like, obviously, we know how special he is, but there are some other programs like Texas A&M and Florida that want him bad, and they're trying to spend a ton of money to get him. Will the Buckeyes match those offers? Will they get a competitive enough offer that will, be sufficient? Obviously, everybody wants to get paid for their value, and it certainly seems like Womack will take less than what he could get elsewhere to come to Ohio State, which means he does want to be a Buckeye. We often hear the refrain whenever the money gets involved, I just want guys that want to be a Buckeye. He clearly does want to be a Buckeye. He's going to take less money to be a Buckeye. But it's got to be, somewhat in the same stratosphere. Now, there have been a couple this year where the Buckeyes haven't been in the same stratosphere with guys, and the guys quickly dismiss it. It's not a very effective strategy as we're seeing in the class rank. However, you can't just go having dead money all over the roster. And Mark Pantoni talked about this. You want guys, if you're going to pay them a substantial amount of money, who can come in and contribute year one. You don't want that money sitting on the bench. Womack is certainly a tier 1A guy. Can he be a surefire contributor in his freshman year, which is usually the determining factor as to how far they're going to go? Well, when we look at the safeties next year, well, let's just look at it this year. You've got Jalen McClain, you got Malik Hartford, you got Caleb Downs. Caleb will be gone, and you'll have two really experienced, really good players in Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain. They'll now be a year older and a year more experienced. Then you got Fahim Delane, who's a freshman this year, and man, did he look good the other day when I saw him. Gosh, he is number one. He's a unit. I mean, that's a dude that's got a body. He's ready to go. And then fellow freshman Blaine Bradford, who brings a little bit of a different skill set than Womack. It'll just depend on what they're looking for as to who gets on the field first. So it's not impossible for Womack to play as a freshman or be a contributor as a freshman, but he's got some pretty good experienced players ahead of him. So we'll see, man. We'll see. We know the Buckeyes have it in their budget. They have it. They can make it happen with their budget, with the revenue share, but they can also dip into, if they wanted to, guaranteed NIL money, because now you can do that with the CSC ruling. The CSC has decided that they're going to go ahead and allow the collectives to be treated as a business, which means the collectives, you can guarantee a guy NIL money, and the collective can manufacture jobs essentially for the kid to earn the money. And if you just, do it however many times you need to with creating autograph signings and coaching clinics and all these things, and you pay the players that way. However, that's new. I think Ohio State, right in the beginning, decided how they were going to handle this. And I don't think that they're going to pivot off of it, which means I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to do the guaranteed NIL deal thing. Ryan Day talked about it, but he talked about it before the ruling. And he said about that, we don't want to guarantee somebody something and then not have it. That's a bad look for Ohio State. And of course it is. But the collectives being able to be treated like businesses now makes it possible to guarantee at least some guys some things. You don't want to go around guaranteeing everybody. There could be some hiccups. There are still regulations. You still have to get the deals passed through the clearinghouse, but you can get them passed for the most part if they're not outrageous sums of money. You just have to have several of these events, several of these autograph signings to kind of piecemeal it out to the guys. The question, will they go all in? I'd like to believe they don't lose Womack over money. I'd like to believe that, because let's be honest now, a lot of people say, I want guys that want to be Buckeyes. It is clear the Buckeyes are his first choice, and he seems to be ready to come to Ohio State for less money. That means he wants to be a Buckeye. Just not going to do it for a crazy amount of less money. And who could blame him for that? Nobody, I hope. That's how kind of we all operate our careers as professionals. And that's what these guys are at this level. They're young professionals, and sure, they got what they want. And then they also got the sound financial decision. Sometimes those don't line up. Usually with Ohio State, we try to make that line up perfectly for everybody. And certainly when it's someone as talented and as Bralan and someone who loves Ohio State. This kid been following Ohio State since he was 12 years old. So I hope they pull it off. We'll find out August 22nd. Now, as far as the rest of the class, there's really not much going on, right? The Buckeyes currently getting ready to evaluate high school players and just kind of waiting to pick their spot when we start seeing inevitably some chaotic decisions and some NIL deals falling through and some guys decommitting from places and then going and picking their spots. So kind of in a spot where you're just holding and observing, but they're not done with this class. Definitely not done with this class. We're going to see some shenanigans, and they'll be able to pounce for a couple of more premier positions. I think we'll get maybe another edge rusher at some point. You got to have at least one, hopefully two, probably a fifth offensive lineman if one becomes available that you like. But boy, the freshman offensive lineman, I think you got three guys who are going to be eventually Ohio State starters. And that is absolutely hitting. That is hitting big time, which makes it a little less urgent. Or, originally coming in, we wanted to get maybe 6 offensive linemen in this class. But if the 3 you got in the freshman class of 2025 are all hits, it puts less urgency on that. And you could stand pat with your 4. You're probably still very well good. But in this class of 2026, we've now got USC and Oregon both in the top 3, as Oregon has just crushed it recently. They now have just 17 commits in the class, 4 5-stars, 11 4-stars, and just 2 3-stars. Their per player average, second in the country to Georgia. Like I said, the Buckeyes per player average 7th this year, which is something Ohio State usually up in the top 3 with. And we've just not seen a class like this in a very long time, a class that's filled with a lot of developmental guys. But I don't think it's all a bad thing. Yeah, I prefer, like anybody else, to have a 87% blue chip ratio. It always feels good. It looks cool on paper. But I want to show you something. If you are someone, and I know a lot of Buckeye fans are, who are down on the amount of 3-stars in this class, because if we go by the 25 or 24/7 composite over the past few cycles, just starting in 2021, you had 2 3-stars. 2022, 2 3-stars. 2023, 1 3-star. 2024 had 3. 2025 had 5, and 2026 has 7. The 2026 class has more 3-stars than 21, 22, and 23 combined. Now, I was getting into a conversation about this. I sat down and did a freshman breakdown after practice on Saturday, and I jotted down notes on all the freshmen that stood out. And I didn't notice it until after I was done, but of all the names I wrote down, none of those names were any of the 3-star guys in that class. The 3-star guys in that class, many of whom I like. I mean, some of them have been on this show, guys that I root for. But I will say, Isaiah West was not in action. He's one of those 3-stars. I think he was limited, right? But he wasn't full on. He's going to be so good. I'm just a full believer in Isaiah West. He is one of those 3-stars. But my point is, there is a difference at this point in their development between the 3-star guys generally and the 4-star guys. I could say the same for Trey Genodum, one of the 3-star guys. You know, when you're looking at the defensive lineman, he kind of stood out as, okay, he's definitely a freshman. Whereas Zion Grady and Epi Satanile and Jarquez Carter looked like they belong, like right now. You know what I mean? You can just see it. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're just a little further away. And Ohio State has done a really great job developing 3-stars. In fact, The Athletic did a study. I forget how long they went back, but Ohio State was number 1 in the country with the percentage of 3-stars that they put into the NFL. Number 1. And I have no reason to think that they won't continue to do that. But since I started this show, talking about the new era of recruiting and the new era of the transfer portal and the wisest strategies to use, I've been thinking also the 2022 senior class. Look at that class. That class has 7 guys left out of 21. Only 5 starters right now from the class of 2022, that senior class. 5 guys out of 21. All the rest transferred away. And because of that, and because of the portal, and because we've seen 30 guys exit the program in the last 2 years in the portal, I think it is wise to take more developmental guys than you used to take more guys that know right off the rip, you're on the 4-year plan, the 5-year plan to see the field. And we intend in those first 3 years to make you an excellent football player. You get a guy like that who's bought in to that instead of a guy who thinks he's going to play in 2 years. And in many instances, a mid-range 4-star kid thinks that because he can go a lot of places and play in those 2 years. So you're looking for those guys who want to be program guys, who sign up for that 3 and 4-year plan and 5-year plan at a place like Ohio State because they believe this is my best shot to get to the NFL. Listen to these guys. They know what they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean I think this was all part of the master plan coming into this thing. I don't think that was the case at all. I think Ohio State got caught by surprise with a few targets when they saw the money go up, when they probably thought it was going to level off or go down. And you missed out on some guys. You kind of took yourself out of the race on several guys, and you had to drop down the board. Like the plan wasn't, we're going to go get 7 3-stars in this class for developmental guys. But I do think that they're okay with it in a lot of these cases, with a lot of these prospects. And to a certain extent, I am too. Obviously, like I said, I want an 87% blue chip ratio as well. But I do think there is a silver lining in going about it like this, even if it's kind of forced. Trying to make the best out of it, I guess. But here's the thing. I wanted to talk about the bottom of this class. I think we got some hits in here. And I was talking to somebody about it, and I asked myself the question, what is the average hit rate for Ohio State's 3-stars? Not sending them to the NFL, but how often are they contributors on the team? And then I realized it's really tough to judge that because there are so few 3-stars. So I said, what if I go back and take a recent handful of classes, and instead of worrying about whether they're 3 or 4-star, I just take the bottom 10 players in the class, regardless of their ranking, just the bottom 10 guys. And we figure out how many of those bottom 10 guys become contributors. So I did that. Now, we got the class of 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. The bottom 10 guys, what percentage of those guys do you think became contributors? Don't need to be starters, just contributors. The bottom 10 guys. And keep in mind, in most cases, we're talking mostly 4 stars for most of those years. Very few 3 stars there. Let's take a look. Take a look together. We will start with 2019. Let's start with 2019. What is the hit rate on contributors in 2019 for the bottom 10? Well, we start off strong. We got Steel Chambers, and then there's Tommy down there. That's 2 right off the rip. Ryan Jacoby, no. Noah Potter, no. Marcus Crowley, no. Bryson Shaw, no. Carmani Hamilton, no. Craig Young, no. Jaden McKenzie, no. DeJuan Jones, yes. That's 3. 30% hit rate for the bottom 10 as far as contributors. You ended up getting 3 starters out of that. 30% right there in 2019. Moving up to 2020. Jack Miller, no. Legend Cavazos, no. Joe Royer, good luck at Cincinnati, but no. Josh Fryer, 2-year starter. Yes. Grant Toutant, no. Mayan Williams, yes, definitely contributed. Ty Hamilton, absolutely. That's 3. Jacob Jones, no. Trey LaRoe, no. Jake Siebert, no. Patrick Gerd was a walk-on who actually did contribute, but I don't know if we're going to count him because he's a walk-on. We're going to stick with 3 for 2020 up to 2021. Jalen Ballard, hell no. Ben Crispin, no. Tyleek Williams, absolutely. Andre Turtine, no. Jansen Dunn, no. Denzel Burke, yes. Zen Mahalski, good luck at Indiana Zen. Sam Hart, no. Jalen Johnson, no. Jesse Mirko, no. Mason Arnold, no. That's 2. 2 out of the 10 in 2021 and now 2022. Caleb Burton, no. Kojo Antwi, no. Carson Hinsman, yes. Jair Brown, no. George Fitzpatrick, no. Dallin Hayden, no. Ryan Turner, no. Kai Stokes, no. Bennett Christian, yes. Avery Henry, no. That's 2. Now, in 2023, you got a bunch of guys that, you're still waiting on, but you got a real big hit in Arvell and Caden McDonald and Austin Saraveld were in your bottom 3 or in your bottom 10. You've also got Will Smith, Bryson Rogers, who could potentially be big contributors this year, and Josh Padilla. So the bottom 10 in 2023 could be awesome. That would be 6 out of 10, which would be an amazing haul. But as you see, looking at those classes there, you're lucky if you get 4 guys out of that bottom 10 that become contributors. You're lucky if you get 4. Now, most of them were 2 or 3. Are we supposed to be worried now whether those are 3 or 4-star kids? Because now looking at it like that, I'm really not. Because I think you are probably just as likely getting a hit out of one of those 3-star kids becoming a contributor than you are any of those 4-star kids, because we see so many of them in that bottom 10 just kind of filter themselves out. When we look at 2024, that bottom 10 includes Jalen McClain. That's an absolute hit. Gabe Van Sickle. That's a hit. We don't know the future yet for Miles Lockhart or the Armstrong twins, or really any of those guys in 24. In 25, that bottom 10 included Jake Cook and Javon McFadden, who are 2 hits right there. Those guys are going to start at Ohio State. You've got Cody Haddad, Trajan Odom, Eli Lee, Jordan Woods, Isaiah West. Isaiah West, to me, is going to be a hit. Jordan Woods is freakishly large for a cornerback. It's pretty funny to see. But my point is, I think we learned something here, and I just thought that, number one, we would have had more hits, and we're not looking for NFL guys. We're just talking about contributors. I would have thought we'd have had more contributors in that bottom 10 over the course of a 4-year span, more than we had. What do we have? 8 out of 40. And looking now at that bottom 10, it just makes me think 3-star, 4-star, it's a low hit rate. Go with the guys you want. Go with the guys that want to be involved with the program the most, that are bought in on the 3 and 4 year plan. And I feel a whole lot better about those 7 3-stars. Not to mention, if we go through each guy player by player, which we might as well while we're here, Jaquaden Guilford is a great wide receiver out of Indiana. I think he's got a ton of potential. Cam Brickle, I wanted Cam Brickle in the class if Ohio State wasn't able to flip Jameer Perez back. And they were able. So Cam Brickle, Preston Carey, those were the two guys I was looking at as a potential one-tech substitute for Jameer Perez. They got Jameer Perez and they got Cameron Brickle, which is not really a scenario I loved, but there is some twitchiness to big Cam Brickle, and he is going down to IMG, and we're going to get to see him play against some top-notch competition. So that's a good thing. By the way, what we're looking here is this is a screenshot of the 247 internal rankings, not the composite. And it's listing all these guys as 3 stars because they are all 3 stars in 247's ranking. But in the composite, there's only 7 that are 3 stars. But we're just going to look at the whole bottom 10 guys. Favor Key, 4-star in the composite. He has, look, Favor's got a pretty high ceiling and a pretty high floor. It's going to be a solid back. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think you're pretty safe. Corbin Fordham is an interesting one at tight end. Corbin Fordham, Ohio State and Keenan Bailey and Georgia really were after him pretty hard. And as a 3-star kid, that tells us something. He was also 215 last year at the Bulls School playing against good competition. And he looked like a wide receiver at 215. He's now up to about 230. Going to be interesting to see him this year, see what he looks like with this extra weight. Luke Fahey, I think, is about as good of a job as you could have done at quarterback because you have Brady Edmonds and Tavian St. Clair. And, it's pretty much that's the plan. You're going from Tavian to Brady. And now you're talking about bringing in a 2027 quarterback in addition to Brady. So none of the big dogs were hopping in that class. So what'd you do? You got a kid from California who's got an arm, got some talent, got some moxie, and wanted to be a Buckeye, was a Buckeye fan all his life. I think that's just about the perfect situation. He's a little undersized, but you get that arm with some juice, and he does got some juice. Aaron Thomas, love it. Aaron Thomas, an offensive lineman out of Arizona who played 1 year on the offensive line. He was a defensive lineman, switches over. They've only got 1 year of film on him. Going through now his senior year, I don't think he's going to end up a 3-star. Then you've got Jameer Perez. Obviously, Jameer gives you something that nobody else on the roster can give you. He's just a totally different body type than you have. And for that reason, and for how rare his body type is, a must take, in my opinion. And I was very happy that they were able to flip him. CJ Sana is a 4-star in the composite, and he deserves every one of those stars. He's a stud. Also new to his position, he is incredibly fast. He is quicker in small space than his counterpart, Sincere Johnson, who is a top 5 linebacker in the country. Got long arms. He's just a total athlete stud and really wanted to be a Buckeye. So love that. Brock Boyd will finish a 4-star. I'm very convinced of that. Brock Boyd is one of the best receivers in the state of Texas. He also will walk into Ohio State as one of the fastest players on the team. And he's got a lot of polish for a high school wide receiver, a much lower learning curve than a lot of these guys come in to Brian Hartline's room at South Lake Carroll with great coaching and a ton, like a real passing offense. The dude he caught for 1,800 yards last year. And then you got Tucker Smith. Tucker, I really like him. I think there is always a place for a jughead, meathead, 6'5", 280-pound offensive lineman. By the way, lean 280. We're talking about a frame that could be 315 lean by the time he gets out of here, and probably will be. But his attitude, everything about him, I like him. Just reminds me of a 3-star Ohio offensive lineman that wanted to play for the Buckeyes all his life. And when he came up to visit, the first time on an unofficial visit, him and the family went and bought out the bookstore in Buckeye gear before they even officially committed, because they got here and they said, that's it. Forget the rest of the OVs. I'm done. This is where I want to be. So looking at that bottom 10, I think that they're going to buck the trend, like I think we're going to see out of 23 with Arvell and Padilla and Will Smith Jr. and Bryson Rogers. And they're going to get more than 4 hits despite a lot of 3-stars. So that's my take on it. Now, am I spinning this to make myself feel better? Potentially, maybe a little bit. There could be some of that. But two things can be true at once. I think that there could be a real silver lining to this. I really do. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. But I was having a conversation on the thread over at Buckeye Huddle, and you guys should check that out, buckeyehuddle.com. And that's where I'm over at now. I'm writing articles, guys. I've written a couple of articles, getting my feet wet with that. It's been fun. It's been a unique experience. It takes me a little longer, I think, than it takes Tony Gerdeman. Tomorrow night, I'll be doing a show with Tony Gerdeman at 8 p.m. That is, so every Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Buckeye Huddle prime time. And tomorrow I'm going to have Tony on with me. I've secretly always wanted to do a show with Tony. I think he's really funny. So check that out. That should be a good one. But no, I mean, it's a good time. Check out buckeyehuddle.com. Come over there. You can read my new article if you want to read my new article, and you can engage on that board if you become a member. And we're always there hanging out on the board, not just me, but all the Buckeye Huddle guys. And it's a really good time. If you're someone who likes to stay engaged with the Buckeyes all day, all the breaking news comes out immediately on that board, and we discuss it in real time. So good stuff. Anyway, I appreciate you guys so much. Please remember to like the video and subscribe if you haven't. Talk to you soon. Chuck and Bucks out.